Sport Business. Global Sports Intelligence.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Sport Business Podcast, getting you up to speed with the stories powering the global sports industry. I'm Catherine Davies and I'm the host of this weekly podcast. Now this week, Matthew Glendinning joins the podcast to bring us a tale of two London-based Premier League clubs, Chelsea FC and Tottenham Hotspurs, and their latest sponsorship travails. And he'll home in on Chelsea's recent front-of-shirt sponsorship deal, this time with industrial AI software provider IFS, its third such deal in as many seasons. Then Martin Ross will give us a detailed look ahead at what he and our chief correspondent, Jonathan Rest, are expecting to hear at this week's FT Business of Football Summit, particularly with the presence of media rights executives from three of Europe's major football leagues, LaLiga, Serie A, and Liga. And we'll wrap up, as usual, with a quick look at what's coming our way in the weeks and months ahead, including the growing popularity of Padel in Martin's hometown of Glasgow, of all places, some of the latest Winter Olympics top audiences, and new broadcast deals and production tech innovations for Crufts, the world's largest dog show. All of this is coming your way very shortly. But before we start, we'd love to have your input on this or any other Sport Business Podcast episode. Please let us have your feedback in a review on the Apple Podcast and Spotify platforms, and let us know if you like what you're hearing and what you'd like to know more about. So without further ado, let's move straight on to our first topic for the day. Now, Matthew Glendinning, our European sponsorship editor, is back on the line with me today. Your third time so far this year, Matthew. You're quite a regular. So before we get on to the subject at hand, what's new with you over the last 7 days?
Well, it's only been 7 days, hasn't it? But I think the big sporting day for me was on Sunday when, in the UK time, we had Canada versus the USA ice hockey, and I was rooting heavily for Canada. I'm very disappointed when they didn't quite make it in overtime. And then quickly followed by Spurs-Arsenal, and as you may know, I support Spurs, and that didn't end very well either. Hopefully, with our new manager, Igor Tudor, we'll manage to stay in the Premier League this year at least.
A rough weekend for Spurs and Canada fans. And I don't know if you know, but I'm a Spurs fan as well, although I've only been a fan for about 20 years, so I don't know if that gives me the pedigree. But our disappointment at the hockey was somewhat assuaged by the fact that out here anyway, the match started at 5 a.m. and they changed the law temporarily for one day to allow pubs to serve alcohol at 5 a.m. So we were able to drown our sorrows, those of us who went to the pub to watch. And now it's back to normal, no alcohol before noon.
Did that include you, Catherine, just out of interest? Were you one of the people who drowned their sorrows in the pub?
No, I was happily asleep at 5 a.m. until about 9. And then I just checked the news when I woke up. So there you go. Right, let's move straight on to the topic at hand. Now you're going to talk about Premier League club Chelsea, which has just agreed to its third short-term front-of-shirt sponsorship deal in 3 seasons. It's third in 3 seasons. This time with industrial AI software provider IFS. Now, this deal sees IFS become a global partner of Chelsea until the end of the 2027-28 season and the club's principal partner with main shirt branding across the men's and women's teams until the end of the current season. The deal, however, marks yet another season in which Chelsea has struggled to sign a long-term front-of-shirt sponsor. So what is it about the West London club, the reigning Club World Cup champion, no less, that makes its leading shirt assets so hard to shift? But Matthew, let me start by asking the question that will puzzle most people. Who or what exactly is IFS?
Good question. It's not the only somewhat obscure brand that Chelsea have had in recent years on their shirt. They've got a kind of habit of announcing some quite left field short-term deals with brands that can't really be classed as traditional sponsors in the Premier League. IFS is probably one of the more established sponsors in that sense because it has done deals before with Cadillac F1 and Sri Lanka T20. However, with Cadillac F1, there is this tangential connection to the ownership group in the sense that the new F1 team is owned by TWG Global, which is the family investment office of Mark Walter, who is part of the Blue Co consortium that purchased Chelsea in 2022. So it does seem likely that the deal would have come through that pre-existing relationship between Chelsea and, in a sense, Cadillac F1, who had already made the deal with IFS. That doesn't tell you who IFS is. It's a Sweden-based company. It's an AI company, an emerging category, of course, and it's valued at over 15 billion euros. So it's not small fry, but it is another short-term sponsorship announcement, which doesn't really address the instability and upheaval in the front of the shirt sort of sector for Chelsea. And we've seen blank shirts on the Chelsea strip for the last 2 seasons, the majority of the last 2 seasons. And that's really a kind of bit of a public symbol of their failure to land a big deal. Obviously, in 2023-24, there was Infinite Athlete. That was a short-term deal. It was a one-year deal, at least in Chelsea's terms. That's quite a long-term deal. And then in 2024-25, the last 4 Premier League games, they had a company called Damak, Dubai Property Company, you may remember, as their main shirt sponsor. And they were luckily enough on the shirt also when Chelsea won the Conference League that season. So I think they got 8 games all told for their money. And they weren't on the shirt when Chelsea won the Club World Cup. And in fact, no one was on the shirt when Chelsea won the Club World Cup as well. So it's been a bit of an ongoing problem, I'd say.
A bit of a missed opportunity there, really, not to be present on their shirts during the Club World Cup.
Well, I guess they didn't know if Chelsea were going to win, but yes, and also the money might have ramped up a bit. So I'm sure they had their reasons, and in retrospect, they probably wish they had been on it.
What do you know about discussions that they may have had with other brands?
Yeah, I mean, we as Sport Business, we've been following Chelsea's these sagas, rather like some Netflix serial for ages. There's always a new story dropping and a new prospect in the ether. We were the first to report, for example, that Chelsea came very close to a sponsorship deal with the betting operator Stake, but maybe even the story prompted fans to protest because that deal was eventually dropped. And then there was a betting crypto sponsor, which looked quite possible. And we also looked at other sort of more established brands like Oracle and Allianz. It seemed at one stage were involved in negotiations, but nothing came to fruition. So, you know, all these brands, whether they're obscure or whether they're established and in fact really famous, they haven't bitten. So you have to ask, what is the stumbling block? How do I put this diplomatically? I think some people in football find Chelsea a difficult club to sort of get their heads around. Its ownership and also its kind of transfer market policy perhaps hasn't always endeared them to people. But look, they're in West London. They've won the Club World Cup. So you do have to ask yourself what's going on.
Well, you would think that the stumbling block may perhaps be their asking price. Do you know what their asking price is?
Yes, we have been across that, and it is probably higher than most listeners would anticipate. We have spoken to well-placed sources who said the club was asking for £55 million per season before it qualified for the Champions League, and that has increased to £65 million per season. Now they're playing in the Champions League. That is substantially higher than, I guess, any of those sponsors are willing to pay. I think the problem is that Chelsea's a kind of unproven, really. You keep thinking they're going to be a consistent player in the Champions League or a consistent player in European football, but the results on the pitch never quite suggest that. And I think the owners are prepared to play a bit of a waiting game. They feel that the brand is this shiny London brand, success and glamour that should command that sort of fee. And so they want to settle only on a deal that's commensurate with that kind of ambition. So you've got the performance on the pitch, and then there's also upheavals at Chelsea itself internally with a lot of the marketing people, in particular, coming and going. There's been Kasper Stilsvig, Tom Glick in particular have left. Kasper Stilsvig went to the Hong Kong Jockey Club, so there's a bit of a change from Chelsea. So that hasn't helped. But look, the Club World Cup has bought them some time. That was reportedly worth £85 million, which is roughly a season and a third of the current asking price. And of course, these shorter-term deals are plugging a gap. For example, our reporting was Infinite Athlete was worth £44 million overall, which was a fee which included the front of shirt for just one season, or just under a season, in fact, and a training kit sleeve for the following campaign. So you can claw back some money with these shorter-term deals. Eventually, you start doing the maths. You think, would they be better off taking 40 or 50? But that's not the way they think about it.
Well, short-term or not, they're all mind-blowing sums, aren't they? But the reset on gambling operator front of shirt deals from next season, that must have also put them under pressure, right?
Yes, it's interesting that not many gambling brands have gone for Chelsea apart from Stake. And in fact, if you consider the top 6 clubs, gambling brands don't tend to go for them. But I think the end up front of shirt deals from next season has created a buyer's market. So many clubs now looking for a front of shirt sponsor at the same time, and not many sectors kind of shouting out and putting their hands up to sort of replace the gambling sector. Sponsors have an embarrassment of options, really, and will know they have leverage in any negotiations. And apart from the gambling operator situation, it's hard to remember a time when there's been so much inventory out there. Manchester United looking for a training kit sponsor. They haven't had one this season after the 3-year deal with Tezos came to an end. And they're also in the market for a sleeve team from Tottenham, who we mentioned earlier. Their deal with AIA ends after 2026-27, but they really need a long run to that. That's such an important deal to them. And their search, I suppose, will be hampered by the threat of relegation, although, I'm still optimistic that won't happen. West Ham in a similar position, relegation threatened, and it will be much more difficult to negotiate their front of shirt deal when the Boyle Sports deal comes off the front. So these lower ranked teams will be hampered by a lack of global fan base brand identity, but that's not the case for Chelsea. So I think they'll keep holding out, and the overall glut of inventory ever isn't really helping anyone.
Thank you once again for coming on. You're always a great guest to have and very insightful. I always learn a lot from you. So well done. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll have you back on the podcast very soon. We're going to take a short break now before we bring on Martin Ross, who's going to look ahead at what he's going to be doing in this coming week, in the weeks ahead. We'll be back after a short break.
From private equity to global media and US college sports, unlock the most trusted data and insights in our reports. Explore more at sportbusiness.com.
Welcome back to the Sport Business Podcast, bringing you the latest sport business industry news and insight. I'm here now with Martin Ross, our editor-in-chief of Sport Business News. And Martin, I believe you have some news to tell us about what you've been getting up to in the last week since you were on.
Yeah, a semi-serious point about Padel. I made my Padel debut at the IMG Summit, actually. Ed Malibran and I of IMG had a stunning victory. Yeah, I went to play Padel on Monday night. I played in Govan in Glasgow. I may have to educate some more international listeners about what Govan is. Govan is basically the home of Sir Alex Ferguson, the home of shipbuilding and drinking and very hard people. It's proper Glasgow, hard Glasgow. Rapsines, but for anybody maybe who's British and seen that, if you follow the stereotypes, in Glasgow, that part of Glasgow, they sell a lot of baseball bats, but not many baseballs. So, Padel is taking off in Glasgow. It's really nice to see. It's got about 9 venues that have sprouted up in the last 6 months. Maybe London, I think, is about 6 times that, but it's probably where London was about 4 years ago. And it's just really interesting to see that it is really taking off. And if it can take off in Govan, it was in a disused warehouse in Govan. I imagine a lot of things have happened in disused warehouses in Govan, but it was a really smart setup. All the courts were busy, 6 paddle courts, 2 pickleball courts, completely booked out in the evenings anyway. And yeah, good to see. I mean, it just makes me think again, I suppose, about paddle and pickleball, and we cover it obviously in part, and only in part because in many ways it's a participation success story. And where does that become really interesting for a lot of the people in our industry? I mean, is it a commercial? Does anybody who plays paddle watch paddle? Not many. I mean, it was a couple of years ago I was talking to people selling Premier Paddle, and I think they were getting even mid-6 digit per year for their TV rights in one of the big European countries, which is pretty decent. There is a model there. It's maybe more of a sponsorship model, getting the numbers involved. Clearly, PIF in Saudi got pretty excited in investing in Hexagon Cup holdings through Performance 54. Again, it's a kind of classic participation play for them, so that's why it's right up their street. But paddle is big in all parts of Glasgow, so it shows no limits. But I suppose my question would be, when does it get super interesting for us? And same with pickleball. I mean, Team has just recently got into pickleball, but where do they make their real margins from, I suppose, in terms of commercial success?
Interesting. I mean, it's interesting that there's pickleball and paddleball at the same venue. How do you choose?
It's to keep the North Americans happy.
Well, that is right. Where I live, there's pickleball everywhere. I don't think people have even heard of paddle, but pickleball is
you kind of have to swap it around the other way here. There's a little bit of pickleball. Mm-hmm. But mostly paddle.
I remember back in the 90s when they were trying to get squash to make it a big thing on television. And it's the same kind of thing. It's a little bit difficult to watch, isn't it? And they would set up squash courts in King's Cross and, have it a big outdoor event and make it very spectacular. I'm not sure it took off. And I wonder if it's the same kind of thing. It's difficult to televise, isn't it? And make exciting.
I mean, there's some great points. If you, on Instagram, if you follow some of the right accounts, it's really exciting. But yeah. I don't know anybody. I know a lot of people who tried paddle. I know nobody who's watched it.
Yeah.
So I suppose there you go.
Wow. Well, let's get on to the topic at hand. You are coming down to London this week to attend the Financial Times Business of Football Summit, aren't you? And I understand you're particularly interested in hearing what senior media rights people at both LaLiga and Serie A and perhaps Liga, what they have to say regarding their upcoming international media rights sales, among other topics. What are you looking forward to hearing about?
Yeah, I will be coming down for that this week. I mean, it is primarily a financial conference, clearly. Financial fair play, multi-club ownership, US investment, women's football ownership. These are kind of the bigger themes. Clearly, there is an interest in how media rights growth, decline, flatlining affects any investment. So how they kind of fit that into the whole conference. So yeah, there's a session on media rights, gauging the impact of a more fragmented broadcasting landscape. So Serie A and La Liga will be there. Ana Gornerio, Serie A International Media Rights Director, and Rebecca Diaz, basically the equivalent at La Liga, will be there talking about the impact of Champions League sales to Paramount on the next domestic sales. I suppose Premier League, League One, Serie A will be coming up in the next 18 months or so. But none of those are immediate. So there will also be a focus on international rights sales. They're going to ask them about League One Plus. Is it a model to follow? I mean, that'll be an interesting answer. I don't think League One will be there, not as speakers anyway. That whole model is hugely under the microscope again this week. French football continues to eat itself. Jean-Pierre Rivière, who's I think president of Nice, described League One Plus as a mistake press, which got a fiery response from Nicolas de Tavernost, who has process of quitting as managing director of LFP Media. There's been other departures. Martin Orange recently left LFP Media, and CVC, as reported by L'Equipe this week, has acknowledged, they say, a decrease in basically the value of its investment. The net asset value, what was 750 million investment in cash, is now much lower, 200 million lower, according to their sources. So, yeah, domestic broadcast rights there have fallen through the floor. International rights, actually, at League One has been much more of a success recently versus what they felt they were underpaid by beIN. But yeah, Serie A and La Liga, I mean, we'll be looking at this through a prism of the Big Five league. What are the major issues for them? What are particularly in international rights trading, because it's a bit more pertinent right now. Domestic is coming up on the horizon more so. For Serie A, they are right in the middle of a simultaneous processes. They will invite bids from private equity for a kind of percentage of a commercial rights vehicle. But then also, since the last 4 or 5 months, I've been talking to international rights agencies to talk for proposals, differing proposals on the table, as you can imagine, in the current climate, whether that's minimum guarantees, whether that's commissions, whether that's giving equity up in your own company or a joint venture. Kind of the model of peak has changed the industry quite a lot. And yeah, peak itself will be a hot topic in that, as we discussed on the Media Pro Que Pasa podcast. Yeah. Where does that leave La Liga's international rights sales in terms of, is Media Pro, I mean, it's a question being asked by lots of people, are they fit now to service that international rights contract, given the level of seniority that has departed? We've explained before, obviously, what Peak's involvement has been. But that whole, those sales continue on and do quite well. I think there's a deal in Poland that is close to being announced, an exclusive deal with one broadcaster, important market for them, given some of the kind of marketing agreements, given Lewandowski at Barcelona. So Javier Tebas will be there. I will be asking Javier Tebas some questions. I may ask him if he knows what Horeca means. I wonder if Javier knows what Horeca means. Hotels, restaurants and cafes.
I'm certain he would, but you have to say Oreca. Don't say the H.
Oreca.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oreca.
Mm-hmm.
He's still not doing his press conferences in English, but I do think he understands a lot more in English than he lets on.
He does. I think that's a good tactic.
Guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Martin, I guess the headline deal that came out over the last few days or the last week or so was the news that the Premier League has secured a 25% increase in its international media rights in South America and the Caribbean. Do you think that's a harbinger of what's to come? Or what do you know about the Premier League? What do you think they're going to be looking at and how that may relate to other leagues like La Liga in that region and other regions?
Will be there. The Premier League just they keep ticking along, don't they? There wasn't huge noises around a sort of competitive process in that region, but yet the deal has been done. They're going soon to market in the Nordics. They've always, picked markets very strategically at the right time. They're well versed in doing this. There's a lot of continuity in terms of the team they have there, the direct relationships they have with broadcasters. I suppose at times they've used agencies maybe in some markets, but they have less, I suppose, maybe volatility that some other leagues have had to go through. So, 25% clearly at this time is an impressive return. So they will be there. Richard Masters will be speaking. But again, given the nature of the conference, he will be kind of bombarded with questions around when is the result of the City investigation, what are the financial fair play implications, all the rest of it. If it's shortly before a domestic tender, there'll be lots of stuff around that. And maybe I see the Netflix thing kind of came up again this week. Somebody, I don't know, proposed it or got reported again as to whether they could be Premflix. Press love that kind of thing. So they may get asked about that again. But they will be there. And Bundesliga have been there in the past. I don't think they're there this year. Their international rights continue to kind of, I suppose, after years of growth from very low base, 15, 20 years ago, they've now had to get very imaginative just to sustain that level of international rights. Bigger clubs in Germany always grumble a bit about how much they're getting from international rights as they look elsewhere. And they themselves have been busy recently in Central America and Mexico in a new 5-year deal with Fox returning as a broadcaster. So a hot region. Everybody wants to go there right now. We will find out about other regions, good or bad, I'm sure, at the conference.
Do you think Javier Tebas will talk about piracy at all?
Yes, I'm willing to bet that piracy or spending by major European football clubs, maybe one in Manchester, maybe one in Paris, are two themes he does like to come back to quite a lot. So he's doing a one-to-one interview, I believe, on stage, and he's also doing, I think, a press conference with assembled journalists. So lots of time to talk about audiovisual piracy. They like saying audiovisual, La Liga, as opposed to broadcast. Audiovisual fraud, that's the one. So plenty of that chat.
That's great, Martin. Thanks for that. Look ahead at what you're going to be doing this week, and I'm sure we'll hear more about what went on at the summit when you're back on next week, if indeed you are. Now, let's look ahead at a couple of other things. I've been having a look over the most watched viewing figures for the Winter Olympics here in Canada. And interestingly, but not surprisingly, the top 10 most watched moments, because they haven't done averages because, the snowboarding final takes place over, 10 minutes. So they've looked at the moments. The top 10 moments, most watched moments in Canada 8 of them were for hockey. But what I really enjoyed reading about was that the 4th most watched moment was for the replay of a fight in the third period between Canada and France. And it sort of encapsulates Canada right now. That reminded me of when I was growing up, when I was a teenager. I remember one of the most popular videos that you could go and rent from Blockbuster or whatever was a 2-hour video of hockey fights. It was just one after another, compilation of guys taking their gloves off and fighting. And it was a huge thing. So, and that was before the internet era. So everybody was watching their hockey fights videos. So out of the top 10 most watched events, they were hockey. The other one was the curling final, where Canada beat.
Oh, too soon,
GB.
Catherine. Don't mention it,
sorry.
please.
Oh, yeah, you haven't recovered from that now.
There was a slightly more viral moment involving Canadian curling. I don't know, did that not got a mention? The F-bombs dropped by the skip and the cheating scandal.
And the finger pushing the stone along. Yeah, that was
and the Swede.
Bit of a scandal.
With their cameras. That was quite exciting.
It was quite exciting, yeah. Yeah, not the finest moment. But I've spoken to a few other people, and I found out what the 2 most watched / popular sports were in the Caribbean region for the Olympics. I bet you can guess which one of them was.
Oh, would it be a homage to John Candy?
as a sport? What do you mean from the movie?
Well, bobsleigh.
Yes, indeed. You got it in one. Yeah.
The Jamaican bobsleigh team. Cool runnings.
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of the cool runnings. That was the name of it. That was one of the 2 most viewed, most popular sports on the Caribbean broadcaster.
What was the other one?
The other one was figure skating.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a perennial favorite. People like that.
Competitors? Any competitors or just?
I don't believe they did. Although they had 12 athletes from the Caribbean region, which was their most ever at a Winter Games. So perhaps they did. I don't actually know
the
that.
4-man bob takes you down to 8, and the reserve, I suppose, takes you down to 7. So, yeah.
That's right.
2 bobs, and they're not got many athletes left.
What else do you have? Do you have anything else you're looking ahead to, or any other business?
Yes, Catherine, I'm going to wrap up with Crufts. I hope you've watched Crufts before.
Yes,
actually,
I have.
On a
Great fun.
side canine point, did you see that your mention of dog sledding at the 1924, 28 Olympics seemed to summon up husky taking to the snow, actually in Milan Cortina? It escaped and ran on to I think it was the cross-country skiing. It ran across the finish line.
It did. Did quite well, didn't it? Mm.
Yeah, so we must bring it back. Bring back mushing, it's called, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sunset+Vine have renewed their deal with Royal Kennel Club for 4 more years. They've been doing this for 20 years now. It must be a good old, production business for them. They must be happy. Royal Kennel Club must be happy. I absolutely love Crufts. I'm not ashamed to say it. I watch it every year. I've never been, actually. I've come close to going once, but I would like to go. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. How many people of a production team do they have at the event, and how many cameras do they deploy for the host broadcast?
I can imagine it's massive. I mean, you'd need, in addition to all your technical crew, you'd need like dog handlers and things, wouldn't you?
Well,
I would guess.
Yeah, that's the thing where I don't know how many they build into the production number. I suppose it's tricky, but
but there's probably, I don't know.
I think
100.
the dog handlers is managed by the Royal Kennel Club. We can be sure of it.
Are they? Okay. Well, I'm going to say 100 just to have a nice round.
It's 150 people.
Wow.
And there's 22 cameras. 22 cameras is considerably more than a lot of European Football League kind of top broadcast matches. It's astonishing. But I'm all for it. I'm down for it. They have deployed more cameras, more roaming cameras than ever before. They're going to use Meta Ray-Ban AI glasses to film some of it this year, which is particularly exciting. It's so exciting that Elta in Taiwan have acquired the rights for the first time. So they are going absolutely crazy for a bit of craft. I mean, I imagine, obviously, people think of craft as a dog show, but it's also much more than that. Flyball, which is really cool. If nobody's seen Flyball, it's basically just very fast dogs running between 2 points to get a tennis ball and running back, and they get so excited about it, and then they get a reward, sort of tug on one of the toys when they get back. So the Flyball production's kind of quite complex, plus there's the roaming cameras, so it's not just like a kind of fixed camera set up for a dog show, kind of best in show, as people kind of traditionally would associate it with. So it has come along quite a way. There's always funny bits as well. I watched it a couple of years ago, and there was a guy who claimed to be a Reiki healer for dogs, which made very good television. He was giving this golden retriever a Reiki session. Do you give somebody a Reiki session? I don't know.
I think you do. I've not had one yet.
A Reiki. The dog promptly fell asleep, and then halfway through the session just got up and walked off. There's a few interesting left field dog people there, shall we say, but I'm all for it. I just think it's brilliant.
I wonder if they're going to use drones, because that's another thing going back to the Winter Olympics where drones added so much to the visuals. Yeah. You really got a feeling of how fast they were going, but they said it really didn't do much for the audio. You don't hear the swish of the skis in the snow and I can imagine dogs not reacting that well to drones.
No, anytime I've taken my dog to the park and there's been a drone, it's not ended well. So I think no drones. Maybe a GoPro or 2. That would be cool.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, I will look forward to watching Cross. I'm not sure if we get it here in Canada, but yeah.
Check with Sunset+Vine. They not only produce it, but they distribute the world feed. So, and if you don't, then there's plenty of YouTube highlights. I don't work for Crufts individually.
I could watch Pirate Crufts.
Pirated Crufts. We shouldn't encourage that, but yeah, that's something.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Martin. You're going to be getting ready to travel down to London for the Business Summit, and I'll look forward to hearing what you find out there. Thank you for coming on, and thank you to Matthew before you. And we will be wrapping this up now and coming back next week for the Sport Business Podcast. To our listeners, if you want to know more about today's stories or any of our other reports and analyses, and especially if you're looking for the world's largest collection of accurate rights fees across media and sponsorship, you know where to go. Take a look at subscription options on our website or get in touch with us via email at info@sportbusiness.com. That's info@sportbusiness.com. And as always, if you enter the code SBPodcast30 at the checkout, you'll get a 30% discount on annual and monthly Sport Business subscriptions. Please don't forget to share your thoughts on this episode and give us your feedback in a review on the Apple Podcast and Spotify platforms. And watch for our weekly LinkedIn posts promoting the podcasts, where you can, of course, also leave a comment. Thank you all for tuning in, for reading, and for subscribing. I'm Catherine Davies, and we'll be back again next week with the Sport Business Podcast.